My name is Steph. My friends have called me Tess all my life. I was born in Michigan, lived out of state for a long time, came back to Michigan, and was here for a year in a home that my husband and I purchased while he finished up business down south. And in the time that he was out of state, I was living in this new, it's an old house, but it's a new property to us, for a year before he came back. In the time, it didn't take long, it did not take long at all. In the time that he was gone, I was telling him, I think this place is haunted because stuff kept happening. I kept hearing things at night. My dog was smarter than I was, which is pretty much always the case. But we'd hear chairs moving. We'd hear activity in the house that, even though I'm armed a lot of the time, I'd check out, there's nothing there, but it was still scaring us. In thinking that the house was haunted and telling him that doesn't play well with a husband who's absent. He must have thought I was giving into stress or something. I don't know what he thought. But by the time he'd come back, and I'm still going on about what I'm hearing and what he doesn't hear, that was awful. The first winter that I was there before he came back home, there was a massive snowstorm outside. Snow was piling up left, right, and in the middle. And doggone it, something hit the house so hard it sounded like the roof gave. It was just a horrendous noise. Of course, nothing I can do but wait it out and make sure the house isn't on fire or something. But by the next morning, it's clear to see going outside and looking around, looking up above, nothing, not a sign of anything had happened to the house. In Michigan, it gets so cold you can hear the nails pull in the house. That was not the case. This was as though a plane had fallen onto the house, a little plane. This was just massive. But in telling my sister and her other what had gone on, he insisted on putting out a couple lights that I had not had. And having done that, I've got a night light at night out in the backyard then. And so I begin getting scratching at the windows on my end of the house where the bedroom is. Tapping on the eave boards, smack, 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 smack on the eave boards. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know what that is, but it scared the crap out of me. And it continued. While my husband is there, of course, there's a phenomena I've become aware of because I began trying to figure out what was going on, and I started seeing some like YouTube shows and listening to podcasts, and other people were talking about this. The tapping on the windows at night and things like that was not unheard of. And I'm hearing outside the house, I'm hearing massive footsteps, nothing, no deer make sounds like this. Step, step, step. You ever been to a powwow? It's the best I could come up with. I tried to tell James about it the other day. If you've been to a powwow, you'll hear the dancers' feet. And I was hearing that. I'm going to be selective of what I tell you about because this stuff gets so crazy. If I tell you some of it, there's no way in hell you could get a grip on it.
How long did you live in that house?
I'm still there. My husband died this past late in the summer. And I've made up my mind that the goofing around that goes out there, the activity where they're patting on the windows and stuff like that, is the kids. And I have seen the children.
I grew up in Ohio, right next door to Michigan. But for most of my life, I barely spent any time there. It was one of those places that was always close, but never really on my radar. And when it came to Bigfoot, I definitely didn't associate Michigan with the kinds of landscapes or sightings you'd hear about out west. It just wasn't on my list. But that changed the first time I actually made the trip north and saw the place for myself. Driving up through the southern part of the state, it doesn't feel all that different from Ohio or Indiana. A lot of it is cities, farmland, and long stretches of highway bordered by billboards and gas stations. But somewhere along the way, usually after you pass through places like Lansing or Grand Rapids, that all starts to fall away. The roads get quieter, the trees start to thicken, and by the time you reach the northern half of the state, it's a different world entirely. The terrain changes fast. Dense forests press right up to the edges of small towns. Lakes cut through the landscape like mirrors. There are places up there where the woods feel endless, where you can stand in the middle of a trail and hear nothing but wind and your own footsteps. And once you've seen it, really taken it in, the idea of Bigfoot in Michigan doesn't seem far-fetched at all. In fact, it starts to feel like this place was built for something to stay hidden. But sometimes, the strangest thing about Bigfoot isn't the sightings. It's what happens between the people drawn to the search. In places like this, friendships form in unexpected ways. Strangers swap stories, return year after year, and find a kind of quiet community built around shared wonder. You come out here looking for something unexplained, and more often than not, you end up finding people who understand you a little better than most. And maybe that's part of the reason the story keeps going. Because in the middle of the unknown, people find each other.
There is definitely a Bigfoot community. And it is a Bigfoot community that is, it's kind of like a family. And let me explain what I say by family. There are siblings who don't like each other. All right, and they'll occasionally yell and throw things at each other. And then there are people that think that they are the patriarch and the matriarch, and they may or may not be, depending on your belief system. There are individuals who think extremely highly of themselves, and they're sometimes fun to be around just because they're funny. Then there are individuals who are quiet about their research, and they'll share it, and that's cool. The quiet ones that share their research are really neat to talk with. So you get all sorts of people that will come to, like, I've spoken at Bigfoot conferences. I don't say that as a badge of honor, I guess. I'm sick. For whatever reason, I guess they're just like, wow, we've got an opening, let's call Sherman. And there are really neat people involved in the Bigfoot world. There really are. But it can also be backbiting. It can be full of jealousy. And anytime money's involved, that's going to happen. We can work together. We don't have to attack each other. I mean, seriously, if you have a gripe with someone, talk about it. But I guess we're all humans. And this just happens to be humans who are interested in something weird.
I'm James Lady. I am connected to this Bigfoot phenomenon in a very unusual way. I grew up thinking that if the Patterson-Gimlin thing were real, I'd want to see one. So I did find out while planning a camping and fishing trip up to the Boundary Waters. I resisted the temptation to click on a Bigfoot video, which was in the suggested video feed, and I eventually gave in and eventually went down the rabbit hole when I found out that there was enough evidence out there to satisfy me anyway that this is a real phenomenon. And so I just set my eyes to the woods. I'm an artistic photographer. Usually I'm angling, doing a lot of fly fishing art, and I kind of burned out on that. And it was kind of a timely thing in 2016 when the world I thought was going mad I set to the woods, learned as much as I could about this phenomenon. And as I've learned, my thought has evolved about their role or what exactly these beings are. But I am the unwitting founder of what I've named the Michigan Aboriginal Project. That has evolved as well, but I'm the sole content provider for it. I've had multiple and repeated interactions with these beings, and that happened really after I set my sights onto the woods and decided to explore the area and found out where I believe these beings commune at night. And then they started poking around my area. So I'm determined to learn as much about this as possible. I'm determined to live the adventurous lives of the celluloid heroes that I grew up with, Tarzan, Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett, and even Fox Mulder as my tastes evolved again. And I changed the name originally I thought it was a fun thing to do to have a YouTube channel, and I endeavored to do that. It used to be Michigan Sasquatch, but I think that this subject needs, we need to raise the bar of discussion with regard to the nature of these beings, in that they are a people. They have a culture. I've listened for over 6 years now, consistently retrieving audio gems from the depths of Michigan's woodlands and watersheds, and it's been the greatest adventure on a beer budget you could ever imagine. It's been fabulous. So I am James Lady, the founder of the Michigan Aboriginal Project, and I'm determined to come back from my camping trips with exciting tales to tell. That's all.
Where we live, I understand that people have encounters with them in power lines, along rivers, power sources, the dam, things like that. There's a confluence, if you will, of bits and pieces, puzzle pieces that make this just an awesome place. The wildlife, the waterways, the ponds, the lakes here. My neighbors have ponds back on their property that I'm going to guess are regular travel spots or places where you can babysit the kids while you go hunting or whatever. But my husband and I sat outside the house one night, as we would in the evening, summer, beautiful night, just getting dusky out toward the point where it's going to get a little dark. And we were talking about things like this, and him and I know that they wanted him to be aware, and at a point they really made him aware, big time. But behind the chicken house you hear, ooh, ooh, ooh. This owl that was no freaking owl. No way. We about killed each other, both of us, to getting from the point where we'd been sitting back to the door and through that door, crowding each other on the way through. It had to have been, I would have guessed, an adult male.
It's just an amazing place, quite honestly. We're surrounded by water. We are the Great Lakes state. My father had taken us up to a beautiful glacial lake in northern Michigan for 2 weeks out of every summer, and I formed a deep fondness for the area. It's very sandy. We have exotic stones that are fun to rock hound. Michigan is, if you ask me, it could be the source of all fresh water in the United States. And there are places in this state that are truly Edenic. They're lush with life, and right now it's all waking up, and the morels will be popping up, the leeks, the fiddlehead fern, the brook trout will jump at most anything. And it's just a wonderful playground if you like water, and if you like the natural wonders of this earth. I think Michigan has all of it. I once heard of an astronaut who said the most beautiful place on earth, he was looking from space, was northern Michigan and its glacial lakes, and it's a magical, fabulous place with many landscapes that are as primordial as they ever have been, and they are truly Edenic, and perhaps the source of water, which I find that these beings sort of gravitate toward.
When I first started digging into Bigfoot reports in Michigan, I didn't expect to find much. But the deeper I looked, especially around Manistee County, the more I realized just how many encounters had taken place there. And not just recently. Some of these stories go back decades. One of the most compelling came from a hunter who had his experience out in the Clay Bank Swamp, just east of Manistee, back in 1962 or 63. He'd been hunting alone, his usual routine, when just before dark, the woods around him shifted. There was a scream, a heavy branch snapping, that creeping feeling that something was nearby, watching. He left the woods cautiously, with a firearm in each hand. He didn't see it clearly, but as he got to his car, he saw the silhouette. 8 feet tall, broad, upright, standing behind the swale. He didn't hunt that swamp again for years. Not far from there, in the early 1980s, another man and his father were hunting near the Little Manistee River when something tore through the woods near them. Loud, heavy, and with a stench that was hard to describe, somewhere between wet dog and rot. Whatever it wasn't a deer. In the seasons that followed, he and a friend found tracks near the road, bigger than anything they'd ever seen. Fishermen in the area had similar stories. Black figures, always just out of focus, just beyond the tree line. At first glance, they might have been bears, but the way they moved didn't quite fit. And then there's the story of a teenager working at an apple orchard. This was sometime in the mid-80s. One evening, he stepped outside and saw something walking behind a tree line above the hill. He didn't say a word about it for decades, but the memory stuck. A thick, hunchback figure, 9, maybe 10 feet tall, too big to be a man, too strange to be anything else. It was headed toward the highway like it had a destination, like it didn't care who saw it. What stands out to me in all these stories isn't just the creature, it's the aftermath. Most of these people didn't come away as full-blown believers, but something shifted. One guy stopped hunting for years, another couldn't shake the feeling that something was following him. One never told a soul until he was in his 40s. These moments push people in different directions. Some walk away from it entirely, others spend the rest of their lives trying to make sense of what they saw. Either way, once it happens, you don't go back to seeing the woods the same way. Encounters like these don't always give you answers, but they do start people searching for their own.
I think I've had encounters before I could ever explain them, and I can now explain them knowing the nature and the nature of these beings with my interactions with them. My first interaction after I decided to pursue this as an interest was October 30th, 2016. It was my second trip into the woods after having decided to go in and poke around and try to see one of these beings. That was 2016, and the last night I had no luck. I found places where I had found before and visited them again, so I'd been in many of these places, and I think they know that I was poking around. So the last night I got a visit. I was unaware. I was going to bed. It was about 9:45, and I was brushing my teeth, ready to go to bed, and went to the side of the campsite, spit my toothpaste out, and looked up. And at the time, I had this red headlamp on. I looked up and I saw these reflections. Okay, so there are these two. Clearly, they were eyes upon final assessment, and they're really wide set, very wide set, and they were this pale greenish yellowish kind of color, and they were there, and I was just there, and we locked eyes. It was like a staring contest, if you will, and it lasted a good long time. After a couple minutes of assessing what else it could be, I ruled out pretty much everything else, given my experience at this campground. I mean, I would have to say if it were another creation that we're aware of, I'd say that it could have been a moose, but there are no moose down there. We have elk in other parts, but I would have seen it. It would have moved, and it wouldn't be entering a campsite, and I was the only one there. So anyway, long impasse, then I decided to break that impasse as nonchalantly as possible, grabbed my video camera. It was a Sony product, actually, and my flashlight, and they were not affixed, so you have a little parallax effect going on. However, and I didn't see another thing. I thought left. And the only reason I stared at it for so long is that I thought if I did leave, I'd never ever see it again. But I had to try. That's what I was there to do. So I grabbed my gear and caught something in the background, which I didn't know for another 4 months. It was February when cabin fever in Michigan sets in, and I was reviewing that footage, and I found an anomaly in the background. Then eventually found the Coach My Video application, where you can take video and zoom and scrub, and I did that, made screen recordings of this anomalous apparition in the background, and it turns out to be one of these beings. Whether it was the one I was staring down, I don't know. I have reason to believe the one I captured on video actually has another next to it, like a younger one. Let's just say it's one subject, because you can see this, the full figure of this subject, this apparition, this Bigfoot Sasquatch, Sabe, and it pivots from the right to the left, almost intentionally, as if it's trying to get out of the light. It sees the light and, and shadows changing in the woods, and it responded in those 0.6 of that second in accordance with where it needed to go to get out of the beam of my light. It was pretty interesting. But that pivoting movement reveals enough. You can detect the ocular recess, first the auricular recess, the ocular recess, the general shape of the torso. As it pivots from right to left, you can see a shadow cast on its buttocks from its left arm. And that's all I got. And I was really kind of thrilled after believing 4 months that I didn't really capture anything on video, but I got it, and anybody can see that on my YouTube channel or on my website. I had to see more, right? I saw one. It was not, I'd love to see one in 4K right outside my camp where I can just take it all in, and study it. I've heard some people say they're beautiful. I've heard some look from a demonic, realm. I haven't had that 4K experience yet. So you can read into that I'm not quitting anytime soon. I've been camping early spring and late fall for most of my adult life. It's a cadence established long ago and a ritual and tradition I don't care to break. And now this is a part of my life. I know I'm gonna have more interaction. The last one I did see, laid eyes on, was a juvenile that had awakened me. It was October 24th, it was a Monday morning, it was raining, and it was the first time I was really in a deep sleep. And I was awakened by, I thought it was like a hissing, and immediately I was thinking cougar. I rolled off, but it had a gurgly, gravelly effect to it. So I rolled off my mat, and I'm looking up at this little guy, probably about this tall, less than 4 feet tall. And it was the one that had, vocalized at me. And it had just, by the time I rolled off the mat and looked up, it had just jumped back and gotten into just a post-like position and didn't move. And I was thinking, maybe deer, no. It was this, you could see the general shape of the body. It was still 6 a.m. And there was still a canopy of leaves above me, and it was raining. It was dark, but enough ambient light you could detect. It was like a lighter tan color, but you could see darkening between the arms and the torso, right? And darkening in the face. I couldn't get any details on that, but darkening in the face, the hair on it, or its color was like a light tan, by the best of my estimation. And I said, hey, and all of this is happening in moments. I said, hey, and it flinched from its, standstill post position. And I said, get out of here, and you can hear all of that. I posted a video called A Very Rude Awakening, which I posted the same day, that night of the occurrence. And that, I had to get out of there. I was a bit unnerved. It was really a terrifying vocalization, which I really don't ever care to hear again. I've cross-referenced that sort of gravelly. I call it one of their vocal modalities, like a vocal or like a harmonic resonance. It has that quality to it, and this was like amplified. But I have recorded them speaking in the similar vocal modality, similar vocal sound, in another encounter that happened.
One thing that's always stood out to me is how some sightings aren't just one-off moments. There are places where people report encounters across years, sometimes decades, in the same general area. It makes you wonder if these creatures, assuming they exist, stick to a home range the same way gorillas or other primates do. If they're not just passing through, but living here. And if that's the case, then sooner or later, someone's going to run into a younger one, similar to the creature that James Lady encountered. That's exactly what a witness described outside Grayling, Michigan back in the early 1970s. He was a kid at the time, playing with friends near a swampy Cedar Creek, when something stood up from behind the water and calmly walked away. It wasn't massive, only 6 feet tall, with reddish matted hair and a slouched posture. He said it reminded him of an old man with a sad, sunken face. Not threatening, just ancient. A presence that didn't belong, and yet somehow made perfect sense in that moment. They watched it walk off, then crept over to the spot it had been sitting. The stump was still warm. That's how a lot of these stories go. Quiet moments that don't make headlines, but stay with people for a lifetime. Some keep it to themselves, others start searching. And sometimes that search turns into something bigger. Steph's story is a good example of that. Her encounters didn't happen all at once. They stretched across months, different days, different signs, but always on the same property. And the more it happened, the more she started paying attention. Because that's the thing about these sightings. Once they happen, they don't just change how you see the woods. They change what you think might still be out there.
I've made up my mind that the goofing around that goes out there, the activity where they're patting on the windows and stuff like that, is the kids. And I have seen the children. I think that they're there more than just seasonally, but seasonally things ramp up. I thought I was hearing somebody shooting just outside the house, and came to realize after listening to different people talking about it on podcasts and things, that they're either slamming rocks together. It sounds like a .22 rifle crack. But they can also make these sounds with their mouths, as I understand. And I'm thinking about it, I could get that. But I have seen the kids. Matter of fact, when I was there by myself in that first year, there was an area just maybe 30 feet from where my bedroom is, where the grass would get wallowed down in an area, probably 10 feet across and almost circular, and this nice prairie grass is soft and deep, get wallowed down, and I'd be picking up this smell that was just horrific. And something would be, pardon my French here, but pissing on the house right there by my bedroom window. But I had even contacted the rangers, conservation people about it one time, and I did not get a satisfactory response, and I'm pretty sure that somebody understood what was going on. I'm a trapper's daughter. My dad was 99 years old when he died, just 40-some days shy of his 100th birthday. When we were kids, we had animal skins to play with. We did not have dolls or crap like that. We played with critters. I know every smell an animal can make, I suppose. I've eaten a lot of them too. But this was no animal I'm familiar with. Definitely animal. I thought for a while it was just drunks wandering up from a bar, but it wasn't. When I saw the kids, my husband and myself sitting in the living room, and I happened to glance to the window and see this gorilla, about my height, black, shoot past the living room windows.
On 2 legs?
2 legs, you betcha, running. And here, I mean, this is gonna look silly, and God forgive me, it had turned slightly sideways to me. And it was almost like, hey, here we are. And I'm sitting there slack-jawed, and maybe a minute or two passed, and zip, he comes back from the other way, and the same thing. By then I'm out of my chair and pretty excited about the entire thing. Of course, my husband never sees anything, but that was the first encounter with one visually. And within days of that, went out to the porch, went to where the back door, and whether I had started to go out the back door, I don't, not remembering, but there standing on the back steps was a lightish brown, tan kind of critter, long-haired, and like I told Sir James there, for all the world, I was thinking Chewbacca. And in just seconds, it was nothing hostile and menacing. It was just there, and within seconds, it was like, zip. I have a Siamese cat that was a young feller sitting in the living room window, summer, windows open, getting toward evening, just starting to dark a little bit. I'm in the living room chair, my husband's sitting on the couch, cat's in the window, and we had one run past the living room, again, the living room windows, and I couldn't say whether it were a dirty white or a light gray, but it was moving. It was really moving. And my cat must have caught it the same moment I did, because the cat pretty much levitated. He looked like he'd been shot out of a cannon. He was gone out of that window immediately. And so cat knows what's going on. It was horrifying at first, but it's the kids who behave like maniacs in Walmart, not the parents. The parents are all right. I have seen the husband, if you will, the mate to her.
Have you seen her?
I saw her when I saw the mister, and they were trying to make themselves as unscary as possible, and I'm not going to explain that. I'll tell James at another time, but they were trying to be unscary, and she, just a feminine, big, warm. Well, she would have had to have been taller than my husband, I would guess. My husband was 6'4", and I would think that she probably topped that by some up towards 7 foot. My brother-in-law is 7'1", and the other's maybe an inch or so taller than that. He's got to be over 300 pounds, and they were as big as him. She was anyway.
Every now and then, a sighting doesn't just involve one creature. There are reports that describe two or more moving together. And when you hear that, it raises the question, are we looking at something solitary, or is this a family group? A social species, living in tight-knit units, the same way apes or even wolves might. One report out of Gladwin County, Michigan stuck out to me. It happened in the mid-90s. A group was out spotlighting deer, a common thing to do in rural parts of the state. Usually, these fields would be full of deer, but that night there was nothing, until the light hit the far end of the field and caught two massive upright figures. One stood around 7 feet tall, the other close to 9, jet black, motionless, red eyes blinking slowly in the beam. They didn't move, they just watched. After a few minutes, the group left, driven not by anything the creatures did, but by an overwhelming sense that it was time to go. Sometimes, that's all it takes. These types of moments are part of what drives people like James Lady to keep searching. He's not just chasing stories, he's chasing sound. Over the years, James has spent countless nights in the woods recording audio, knocks, whoops, distant howls that don't match known animals. It's not always dramatic, but it adds up. A pattern, a presence. And in a state like Michigan, where thick forests meet old farmland, it doesn't take much to imagine something just out of reach, watching, and maybe even communicating.
That was October 21st, 2019. It was a Monday night. And it may not have ever happened had I not changed my trip. That trip, I brought it up a little bit in the calendar so that I could attend a wake for a buddy's mother's buddy's mom. And so it was a 3-night trip. The first night I had that terrifying encounter. It was all vocal. Didn't see a single one. Didn't see any eye shine. Like I said, it was raining. I'm under a big tarp and with low light. And I was fully expecting to die after I heard, this madness and felt like a zapping, like a static in my eardrums. It was very uncomfortable. Well, it was I was messed up for about a month after that. And I can't, this is the dynamic that I think that needs to be talked about more, because we need to have this subject accepted in the general population, if you ask me, because it's very real. And people who have experience with them have no one to talk to. I couldn't process this. I couldn't process it. The only way I've learned to deal with it and process it is actually delve into it, study the audio that I've gleaned from the woods, and learn as much about them as possible. They've never harmed me, even though I thought I was going to die that night, October 21st, 2019. They never harmed me. There was, after the 15 seconds or so that I actually heard, it was audible. I heard this "Kichichu ha" downstream, and it was the weirdest thing, because I was halfway through my second beer and I was going to go to bed, and I hear that. I get up and stretch, and then I hear that "Kichichu ha." I'm like, that's really weird. Who else would be out here in the middle of this valley, miles from anywhere, and be saying hello in the rain from the woods? But then it dawned on me, this is what's going down. I heard some other madness, and then a big boom that I felt. You can hear that in the audio. And I've recorded that only one other time, which takes us up to the UP, August 11th, 2020, where you can listen to a Hanzo file. That file begins with a big boom. And there's some vocalizations in the Hanzo file that seem like, well, there are definitely multiple subjects. It seems as if it's kind of a greeting. So I wondered back then, when I was terrified and thought I was going to die, was that big boom, and was the Okichichu vocal expression another madness that I sensed? And was that a form of greeting? I don't know. I don't think it's a very nice one. They had to have eyes on me. I was the only entertainment in the woods that night. I know they move up and down. And speaking with Steph, it seems the activity is heightened in early spring, late fall. And that just is coincidentally, when I've been camping, I go early May, late fall, no bugs, no people, typically speaking, or fewer of both. All I know, there was some crazy vocalizations, there was audible speech, and I didn't know for a month, because I had to process this on my own, deal with it. I didn't have any support from my wife at the time, not my family, not my friends. They all think I'm freaking crazy. And you go through this incredible otherworldly experience with beings that I didn't see that night. They were clearly there. A whole month went by. Then I listened to the audio, thinking, I didn't think it was going to be any great shakes on the audio, because it was raining and my recorder was below the tarp, and I just left it alone. I really didn't want to delve into audio at that point after having gone through what I had. And but I did a month later, and then I was screwed up worse than those first 30 days for another few months. It's tough on the family, I have no one to process it, to get it out. Then I went down that abyss, if you will. If you stare into the abyss, says Nietzsche, eventually it's going to stare back at you. And I've been there on this subject. I've gone deep, and I own it. It's my cross to bear and my burden, but I'm still determined to learn more about him, especially since a lot of what I am trying to figure out, the closest things to answers that I can fully wrap my head around, and I'm following the evidence. I got a lot of data, a lot of evidence, and the totality of it says that these beings are, if evolution is a thing, they are well beyond our evolution, if evolution is a thing. And if it is, how did we devolve, right? How did we lose the ability to live out in an Edenic sort of terrain, which is not always, heavenly. It has a lot of great peril as well. These places, I can easily, if I didn't have the audio evidence, I would expect a paddy wagon to come and pick me up and put me in a straitjacket, and understandably, not knowing any better, thinking I'm crazy, but I'm not. I was up there for, I think it was my daughter's orientation, up in Marquette, and my youngest, one of the last times I saw both my daughters, actually. I'm an estranged father. This subject is not good for family relationships. But the thing is, I'm dealing in a reality, and other people, I think they're beginning to catch on. However, so we were up there, and we were at Little Presque Isle Point. After like 2 hikes we had taken that day, I was exhausted, didn't want them to go alone. They were determined. So we drove up there, my daughters and one of my daughter's friends, and we went up to the end of Little Presque Isle Point, and on the way back, the girls are sensitive to my toys and obsession with the Bigfoot thing. So I said, anybody mind if I do a little recording on the way back? They said, they gave me the hard time, so I just didn't do anything. I had my FLIR, I had a night vision, video camera, I had my GoPro, I had a recorder. I didn't employ any of it. Because halfway back to the car from our little stargazing, which is terrible, it was mostly cloudy, I saw 2 reflectors, and I'm trying to think of what is that. And this is the first time I had ever seen, it turns out to be eyeshine, ever seen red eyeshine, pardon me. And so I said, girls, they were about 40 feet in front of me, ahead of me. So come back here, and they did. And the set of eyes remained, and I'm asking them, what do you think it is? And we didn't know. I thought it was reflectors of like on a post or marking a trail or even a campsite, but there was no camping there. There were no other trails in that direction by my recollection. So they're coming back, and then these 2 eyes moved very, almost imperceptibly slow, but very slowly the eyes moved that way, looking to our right. And then they very slowly came back, and during that, or not long after, another singular eye. So these eyes are here, and this is the perspective of these beings. A singular eye appeared over here, and then another singular eye I saw the silhouette of leaves moving at a singular eye between these other 2 subjects, and I'm thinking, oh God, it was really terrifying. So I said, okay, girls, we're gonna go. And looking back, I think that motion of that first subject that I detected was just basically saying, leave. It would look toward the parking lot and back at us, very slow, very imperceptibly. And I asked my daughter, did that just move? She confirmed it did. And that's when we decided, or shortly after, I'm thinking there are 3 of them, and we just had to leave. It was very scary.
How tall do you think those 3 were?
Don't know. Here's an interesting thing, because we went back a few months later. So that was happening, I think, in June. So it was, I think maybe when Abigail was moving in to school. So we went back to that trail, and Abigail confirmed that we were about in the same space as we were before, and I walked in the direction of those eyes. And about 60 feet away, where Abigail told me to stop and where I thought, it was about the distance of these beings, there's a ditch, not a ditch, but down, there's a hill. It's like a big berm, right? So I couldn't tell you. And even if it were flat, they can be close to the ground to do it. So there's one subject. This appeared over here, maybe 4 feet away. And then the singular eye between them, revealed by the silhouette of leaves. That was really that was creepy. And there was a moment I was staring, this gets weird. The color of the eyes was not a consistent red. There was like an amber in it as well. And maybe it was my inability to process, or maybe affected by the adrenaline rush where I'm developing. But there was like a swirl of color, that deep red and the crimson orange. It was weird, kind of like lava in a way. Probably the closest description. That was scary. I don't know what that tells you, but that happened. I saw all that, and that happened. I did record the girls. We had a little conversation on my GoPro on the way out after that. You're not going to be visible. So what just happened, Abigail?
This is so like formal now.
What do you mean formal? Oh, it's not a formal interview. Just say, I mean, we just went, that just happened.
Yeah.
What'd you see?
I saw a set of red eyes.
I know.
You say they were like kind of bobbing, but Brooke, stop. You say they were like,
Slightly. It was as if it were getting nervous. It was like almost nervous. It just moved ever so slightly side to side and up and down a little bit.
I saw the two, and I was like, okay, maybe they're like light reflectors, but then they like
move.
I saw it like move its head almost as if it was like turning, and then it looked back at us, and then you were like, okay, girls, stay with me. That's when I got freaked out. Oh God, I'm sweating.
And I saw what had to be eyes of at least two more. So
I only saw one set.
That was crazy, and they were red. First time I've ever seen red eyes. And my doubting daughters, for a moment, maybe, believe that maybe I'm not crazy and these beings do exist. So yeah, that happened. That was the UP. So the recordings, though, I was vacationing there. It was August 11th. I let my daughter stay in Marquette outside of the campsite because they didn't sleep too well the night before. My daughter had an apartment there. They went into town, and I had learned the day before from a waitress who said she saw one of these beings. She said it was absolutely huge. And so she told me where, and I went there. And I started finding structural artifacts that I look for, that I've been looking for all morning, actually, to no avail around here. But looking for structural artifacts, I started seeing teepees and lean-tos and wigwams. You can see this. I documented my ingress for the first time, and I went back and documented all of that. But this is like a village of I mean, it's the highest concentration of actual structural artifacts that I attribute to these beings. So I went back later and dropped 2 recorders. I got the Hanzo file, which I had mentioned before, and also on my homepage, michiganaboriginal.com, you'll find speech. It's a video I just called speech. I think it's about 12 seconds long or something like that. But it's an angry Sasquatch, if you ask me, because it was captured on a recorder that does not have the ability to schedule the recordings. So it was on a little cheapy thing with no computer interface, but it captured right after I left. It captured this angry speech. There are 3 subjects present. I share the spectrogram, the actual audio profile, if you will, visual profile, and it's kind of scary stuff. The other recorder was set to go off at 8 p.m. That was about 40 minutes after I left, and it did not pick up this vocalization, so I'll share this with you. So, okay, that troubles me a bit.
It sounds
angry.
ugly, angry.
Yeah, and I'm sure it was. It's interesting because I have another, I was reviewing the audio on the GoPro footage, and I actually captured sort of a weird melodic whistle in the background. It's like, if I can do this, not exactly, but that cadence, and it's really pretty. I don't know of any birds that sound like that. I've looked and wondered, and you know, I believe their eyes were on me. I mean, quite honestly, there was that energy in the air where you really suspect you're being watched. I had that feeling, and it's confirmed by that recording captured right before I left, or after I left.
A lot of times I would hear sheet metal crashing in the backyard, and there's no way we didn't have sheet metal lying around for anybody to steal. There's no way anybody's making off with it, and you're hearing it clatter, loud sheet metal noises, and again, it never woke him up. People say we've got coyotes here. I believe we must have coyotes here, but we've never been troubled with them at my place. One night, after my husband I'd gotten to the point where I was going to leave. I couldn't take it anymore. Being disbelieved by someone who you've spent your life trying to make a good life with, and all of a sudden I'm not reliable. You know, this is one area that was not going to go away, and I'm not going to back down, and I'm not going to say I don't hear it. He's not hearing it. One night we heard, I guess it started out with a fox screaming under the bedroom window. When you think about this for a minute, you've ever heard a fox scream? It's a terrifying noise. This was way loud, and I can't believe it was a real fox. I really don't. But that was the first thing, and shortly after that, we're hearing hounds, and I'm thinking to myself, we are almost at the anniversary of that event. There's a particular night of the year called Walpurgis Night. This was the eve of Walpurgis, and we're hearing hounds, and I'm thinking somebody's running coons on my property, and I was ticked. We're thinking we're gonna have to move them along, but in hearing that, it seemed to get closer, and I started hearing horses running. That didn't make any sense at all. There's nobody right there with horses, and so you're hearing first the fox scream, you're hearing horses, you're hearing the hounds. Then outside the bedroom and around the house, I mean, it's really got his attention now. This is loud and menacing. We're hearing coyotes around the house running, yelping as they run, and they had to have been right up against the house. And I'm thinking, first, had somebody chased coyotes, coyotes would have dispersed. But this is going on outside the house, absolute calamity, clamor, havoc going on out there. I'm telling him, honey, this is them, and he's clinging to the edge of the bed. This 6'4" guy, massive, strong, not an ounce of fat on him, scared to death. And I'm thinking, good, about frickin' time. And I believe they did it on purpose. Because if I had left, our home site would not have been the home site. But I couldn't take it any longer, and I think they made themselves known the best way they were able. But that subsided, and we spent the night, and we did a lot of talking, and from there on in, he helped me.
If there's one thing that becomes clear the deeper you go, it's that Bigfoot isn't just a story. It's something people in Michigan have been encountering for generations. In the forests, the swamps, and the spaces just outside small towns. Places that feel familiar until something shifts. And the people who see it aren't fringe believers or attention seekers. They're everyday folks. Hunters, hikers, farmers, kids, just living their lives when something unexpected steps into view. For some, that encounter changes everything. It shifts the way they see the woods, and in some cases, it shifts the way they see the world. But that shift can come with a cost. Most people don't talk about what they've seen. They keep it quiet for years, sometimes forever, all because they don't want to be laughed at. Because once you share something like that, you can't take it back, and ridicule has a way of silencing stories before they're ever told. But not always. Sometimes people like James and Steph find the courage to speak up. And when they do, they find each other. They find others who've had the same quiet doubts, the same strange memories, the same moment where the woods went still and something stepped through. Out of those moments, a kind of kinship forms, a shared experience, something like a family, born not from proof, but from understanding. And maybe in the end, That's what keeps people coming back to the woods. Not just to find answers, but to find each other.
But yeah, they are beings of another level, at
They're
least.
not beasts. They're intelligent.
They can be beastly,
Okay.
but they never harmed us, right?
No.
With the multiple
No.
encounters.
They did steal my garden blind one year. And I think that was the kids again.
They
They took all my dang squashes.
Oh God, that's funny.
They left me a couple squashes, but they took all my squashes.
Oh my gosh.
I had heard this gentleman speak at a point on whether it was a podcast or something I'd listened to, and didn't realize he was as close as he is where he lives. But I remembered the name, and not long ago I caught him on another one and just looked him up, and sure enough, the gentleman is living reasonably local. But in contacting James via email, he connected back right away, and I was really surprised because I'm so used to being passed off as a nut job.
Yeah, no, you're a breath of fresh air, actually, for me.
I'm honest.
Yeah, well, and I get some, you do hear from nuts, but your missive had a resonance of truth and humility, and I knew that. You were so kind and gracious and almost.
I'm apologetic for bothering people, aren't I?
Oh, don't be. You know what? If they have a problem, it's their problem. It's not yours. You're adhering to your experience and your truth, which is a reflection of the reality of this nature. There is one truth, and I think we're beginning to learn a little bit about this certain truth that affects a lot of people in so many ways. And you and I have found we're simpatico in that we have struggled deeply to the point where it can ruin a relationship, right?
It was tearing.
Yeah, my fiance almost left me. She's now my wife. Proves what kind of a salesman I am. Yeah, it's really hard. Not only it's harder on us. It is harder on those as well. But to get that response of disbelief and
Like they
dismissal.
lose their faith in you. They loved you to death right
Yeah.
up until the moment you tried to tell them something that they could not believe.
That's
and then
what-
all of a sudden you're dismissed, yes.
And after I got after my obsession and phase, I've been through it. And I know that was hard on her because you're not all there because your mind is on this subject. And nobody believes you. And I think that's what's motivated me to be here today.
Yep.
To share the reality of this experience. I'm so grateful you reached out, and we have this relationship now, and I'll see you again, I'm sure. And I'm always there for a phone call if it's really trying. But you said earlier that you have the courage now.
I got
I'm
the
grateful for
courage,
that,
but I get
'cause-
scared.
Yeah, well, it's a reminder that I'm not alone. We've experienced the same things, and the social dynamic is really a horse pill to swallow. It's hard to swallow, and you learn quickly to basically shut up. Then you're internalizing all this stuff,
Yes.
and that's not healthy. Yeah,
You keep your mouth shut or get laughed at.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, toss one little thing out. The word incredible, okay? Credible means it's right there and honest and true and all that. And when you say something is incredible, I got to learn to stop saying incredible. This is incredible. It's not incredible. It's
Credible.
the truth.
You're
It's
right.
credible.
That's a good thing to say.
Don't laugh at people.
Yeah, don't laugh. Yeah, people
Don't laugh at people.
can be wicked. And for someone in need, as we were, to help process and digest on so many different levels this experience, it's very difficult without somebody who knows you're not
Similar.
nuts, right?
Yeah.